Yerp, yerp, yizerp. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be previewing what I think is the biggest game this weekend, and that's going to be the Alabama Crimson Tide playing at the University of Florida, 3:30 p.m. in Gainesville, Florida at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Let's dive right into this one because it's going to be a blowout in my opinion, but it's going to be a good game. That's what y'all want to hear, so I'm here for it. Let's go. So let's start off with some general information here. Alabama is a 14.5 point favorite in this game. 14.5 points. That Vegas is showing that they have a lot of money on the line on Alabama, man. Alabama coming into this game with the number 11 Florida being 14.5 point favorites. Let's just go ahead and break down some team stats here. As far as points per game goes, Alabama averages 46 points a game. Florida averages 38.5 points per game. Alabama only gives up 13.5 points per game. Florida gives up 17 points per game. As far as total yards go, Alabama is averaging 462.5 yards a game, with 310 of those being in the passing game and 152.5 being in the running game. Florida is averaging a whopping 609.5 yards a game, with 228 of those coming in the passing game and 381 of those coming in the rushing game. As far as yards allowed, Alabama is allowing 251 yards a game. They are allowing 173.5 passing yards a game and only 77.5 rushing yards a game. Florida is allowing 325 yards a game. 224.5 of those are being in the passing game, and 100.5 of those are being in the running game. Let's start off with Florida. Let's go and dive into those guys a little bit deeper here. Starting off with their record, Florida is 2-0. They have won games. They won 35-14 against FAU in the first game, and they won 42-20 against USF in the second game. Neither game was really a big test for Florida. FAU was an underdog, not up to the standards of Florida. USF the same way. None of those guys was in any match for Florida. So let's start off with offense for the Gators. On offense, the strengths on offense that I have for the Gators as of right now is going to be pass protection and their running game. I think they've only given up one sack so far this year in the two games. And their running game, like I showed in before, with their rushing yards of those guys averaging over 381 yards rushing in between those two games. So I think the pass protection and the running game are going to be their strengths. So weaknesses I feel there's going to be for the Florida offense is the two quarterback system. I feel that's a weakness. Now don't get me wrong. Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson are very capable quarterbacks in their own rights, right? They're very capable quarterbacks. You know, either one could be starting at any school at this point in time. So I'm not taking anything from those guys, but I feel like the two quarterback system doesn't allow Emory, since he's going to play most of the snaps, doesn't allow him to get into a rhythm, which has forced him into some turnovers early against lesser competition. Also, a lack of tight end production. I mean, Kyle Pitts, he went off against Alabama last year, and this year I don't think they have a tight end that has a catch in two games. So the lack of tight end production, especially coming off the back of Kyle Pitts last year, who had a phenomenal year. He was just dominant at the tight end position. The lack of that kind of... In Dan Mullen's offense, the tight end is very, very, very influential as they line them up in the H-back spot. They line them up in the regular tight end spot. They'll split them out wide. They'll put them in the slot. That's what Dan Mullen offenses like to do with the tight ends, especially at UF. And this year, I just haven't seen any production at all from the tight ends in the first two games for Florida. Let's talk about some key players for Florida here. Starting off with quarterback Emory Jones. On the year, Emory Jones is 31 of 49 for 264 yards. He's at a 63.3% completion percentage. He's only averaging though 5.4 yards a pass, which isn't much, showing me that he's not attacking the ball downfield much. He has thrown for 2 touchdowns, and he does have 4 interceptions, though, and especially against FAU and USF, that does not look good. I watched the FAU game, and both interceptions that he threw, he stared the receiver down, and then he threw right into coverage. I mean, the receiver wasn't open at all. There wasn't a window to where you couldn't even see the defender. He just threw right into coverage. Those were bad throws on his part, but he is a key player. He also is the second leading rusher on this team with 23 attempts for 155 yards at a 6.7 average, and he does have a touchdown rushing. Another key player is going to be the other quarterback that you're going to see come in there from time to time, who I honestly think should be starting because he's more athletic, more explosive. He's much bigger. But that's Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, he's only attempted 11 passes all year. That's it. He's only thrown 11 passes. He's completed 6 of them for 192 yards. He is averaging 17.5 yards per completion, though. And he does have 2 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. I think both of those touchdowns coming in last week's game, if I'm not mistaken. Anthony Richardson is also the leading rusher on this team at 11 attempts at 275 yards. This man is averaging a whopping 25 yards per carry. 25 yards per carry, and he has 2 touchdowns with a long of 80 yards. So this guy he is a big play threat. He does have speed. I've seen some of their highlights. I watched a couple of their games, and let me just tell you, if he gets out in the open field, it's going to be real, real hard for these DBs and these defensive players to catch him. Moving on. Next, we have running back Malik Davis, who is third on the team in rushing. He has 21 attempts for 126 yards, 6 yards per carry average, and a touchdown. He also has 2 receptions for 9 yards as well. The next one's going to be running back Dameon Pierce. He is the 4th leading rusher on this team with 11 attempts for 86 yards, and he is the leading rushing touchdown getter at 3 touchdowns so far this season. He also does have 6 catches for 38 yards out of the backfield, so he is probably their leading person that's not a wide receiver in receiving yards. And also wide receiver Jacob Copeland. He is their leading receiver with 6 receptions for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. He is their deep threat as he is averaging 31 yards per catch, which is big time, and it's something Florida's going to need playing against Alabama, right? So, yeah, those are the key players on offense. My strength and weaknesses, again, on offense, pass protection is a strength. Running game is a strength. Weakness is 2-quarterback system and the lack of tight end production are weaknesses for me. Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball for Florida. Some strengths. I can't say the word strength to save my damn life. Some strengths for Florida on defense, I think, is going to be their defensive line play and their surprising linebacker play. I thought linebacker coming to the season was like Florida's weak point. I didn't feel like them boys was as proven or as capable as other linebacker corps across the nation, but they have played surprisingly well with their linebacker group leading the team in tackles. So that's pretty good. But I do like the defensive line play. They have been getting some consistent play from those guys. Most of their sacks are coming from the defensive line this year. Weaknesses. Pass coverage would be my weaknesses. They're giving up 224 yards a game. Last week against USF's quarterback is trash. Again, that's not compared to regular people. That is trash among their peers. I want y'all in my comments fighting me, talking about I'm calling players trash and I can't play a lick of football. Listen, I was a basketball player. I love football, but I was a basketball player. I didn't have the physical attributes to play football, right? So I'm not calling these guys trash compared to me or compared to any other regular Joe Schmo. When I call somebody trash, I'm calling them trash compared to their peers, right? So USF's quarterback was trash. But N'Kosi Perry did put up some big numbers against this secondary, so I do think the pass coverage can be a weakness for this defense. Also creating turnovers. Against 2 inferior teams, these guys have only created 3 turnovers so far, so I think that's a weakness. These guys have to get the ball back into their offensive hands, especially if they want to beat Alabama, right? Because we know if you don't create any turnovers versus Alabama, you ain't going to win the game. That's just how it is. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Let's talk about some key players on defense for Florida, right? Defensive line, we got Zachary Carter. Zachary Carter has 7 tackles, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble. Probably going to be their best guy up front. At linebacker, we got Jeremiah Moon, who has 11 tackles. He is leading the team in tackles, and he also has a sack. The other linebacker position, we have Chris Bogle. He has 9 tackles. He's second on the team in tackles, and he also has a sack. Cornerback, we have Kaiir Elam with 6 tackles and an interception. At safety, we also have Rashad Torrance, the second at 8 tackles. He's going to be the third leading tackler on this team. Those are my key players for Florida. Now let's get into some keys, 3 keys on offense and 3 keys on defense for Florida if they want to win this game against Alabama, right? So first, 3 keys on offense. Number 1, if Emory is going to be the primary passer in this game, then he has to be more efficient. He is completing his passes at a 63% clip, but he's only averaging 5.4 yards a completion, which means his passes aren't going far down the field. They aren't reaching anybody. He needs to be a more efficient passer. He has only thrown 2 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. That ain't going to cut it against the almighty Bama. We already know that, right? That is not going to cut it. So he has to be more efficient if he's going to be their primary quarterback and their primary passer. Key 2 to winning this game on offense, establish the line of scrimmage early. We all know how about Alabama's front 7, right? Their front 7 year in and year out since Nick Saban has been there has been one of their strong suits, right? So Florida gonna have to they're gonna have to man up, right? Drop their balls and play great offensive football on the offensive line. The offensive line is going to have to establish that, hey, look, we know how good y'all are, but we came to play too. If the offensive line ain't got that attitude, then it's going to be a long day for whoever at quarterback. I really wouldn't care if it was Jesus suiting up with the way Alabama's front 7 has been playing the first 2 games, right? And number 3, the third key on offense for Florida to win this game is make big plays as often as possible. We've seen it with Jacob Copeland averaging 31 yards a catch. We've seen it with Anthony Richardson averaging 25 yards a run. We've seen Anthony Richardson averaging 17.5 a pass. These guys, you're going to have to make big plays, right? Big plays, big plays, big plays. That's what it's going to all come down to when we're talking about Florida versus Alabama, especially on offense. These guys are going to have to make big plays. They're going to have to make them often, early and often, right? Right? You want to get on the board and let Alabama know, hey, if y'all going to keep scoring, guess what? We're going to keep scoring too as well. So those are my 3 keys on offense. Emory has to be efficient. Florida has to establish a line of scrimmage early, and they have to make big plays as often as possible. Now let's move on to 3 keys on defense for the Gators if they think they're going to beat Alabama, right? Number 1, they have to take away the big play in the passing game. We all know about Alabama's wide receivers when we talk about Jameson Williams and John Mechie. Jameson Williams is a world-class sprinter. He has speed. We saw it in the Miami game when he caught that pass on that double move and left everybody in the dust. So you have to take away those big plays in the passing game. Bryce Young, if you give it to him, he's going to find it, right? He's a very good young quarterback. Very good young quarterback. He's shown us that so far through the first 2 games. So he's definitely going to have to step up and make those big plays when they count. Also, number 2, make Bryce Young beat you with his legs. So hear me out. I know Bryce Young is a dual threat quarterback, right? I know he's a dual threat quarterback. But he has yet to attempt a run as far as scrambling or even a designed run. So what you want to do is you want to cover up these receivers, bottle up these receivers, put pressure on him, and make him show you that he can beat you in a way that he hasn't shown anyone that he can beat them so far in college, right? In high school, we know what he did. But in college, he really hasn't needed to. He hasn't needed to run the ball at quarterback. So what Florida has to do is Florida has to bottle up these receivers, play great coverage downfield, and hope that they can get some pressure on him and rattle him and get him with happy feet, right? And make him beat you with his legs. Make him beat you with his legs. He hasn't shown that he can do it on the collegiate level yet, so why not try to make him beat you that way instead of letting him sit in the back of the pocket and throw it all over you. Florida, you got to get him uncomfortable. You got to get him out of his rhythm. Make him run to beat you, and you got to live with something, right? You can't let him run and throw the ball. I would rather him not be able to throw the ball and just run because I don't feel like he can dominate the game running it the way he could slinging the ball around. You know what I'm saying? And as far as the third key on defense to win this game for the Gators, discipline. Discipline, 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 and assignment football. We all know that Alabama is one of the most disciplined and one of the most sound in assignment football in college football. So what Florida has to do is they have to combat that with the same amount of discipline and the same amount of assignment football. Meaning, we can't have stupid penalties. You can't have blown coverages. You can't have missed tackles. You have to play as disciplined as you can, and you have to play great assignment football in order to beat Alabama. So those are my 3 keys on defense. Take away the big play in the passing game. Make Bryce Young beat you with his legs, and discipline and assignment football. Now, my friends, let's move on to the mighty, mighty Alabama Crimson Tide. Crimson Tide coming to this game as 14.5-point favorites. They are 2-0. They won their first game against Miami, which I thought would have been close, but it ended up being 44-13. And they won their second game against Mercer, 48-14. Let's talk about Alabama's offense. Some strengths on the offense, I would say, would be quarterback play, the wide receiver play, and the running back play. So let's talk about the strengths, right? The strengths are the skill players for Alabama this year. The strengths are the skill players. The skill players, it seems like they just reload and repeat, right? You got Bryce Young and those guys. You got a great receiving core with the addition of Jameson Williams, the transfer to Ohio State. And you also got like a plethora of running backs, like 3, 4, 5 running backs. Florida has 3, 4, 5 running backs too, but Alabama has 3 or 4 or 5 running backs. So I think those 3 areas, the skill players, are the strengths of Alabama's offense, right? As far as weaknesses go on Alabama's offense, the only weakness I could come up with would be O-line play in the running game. So the running game at Bama hasn't been the best that it's been. It hasn't been what we've been known to see Bama do in the running game. And I do think that is because they didn't bring back as many linemen, and they're plugging and playing guys and trying to figure out a nice lineup and get these guys, to gel. It does take a few games for an offensive line that hasn't played a lot together to gel. So I do think that the offensive line in the run game is the weakness of this offense, right? So now let's talk about some key players. At quarterback, you got Bryce Young, the outstanding freshman. He's 46 of 65 for 571 yards at a 70% completion rate, and he has 7 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. This young man is playing great as a redshirt freshman because of the extra year. But just as in his first start against Miami, high caliber game, big lights, big stage, and he just came in there with all the confidence and all the moxie and didn't let anything disrupt his game. He played great. So yeah, he's definitely a key player. Running back Brian Robinson, the leading rusher on this team with 22 carries for 130 yards and a touchdown. He also does have 3 receptions for 10 yards as well. So, and also moving to our wide receiver, we have Jameson Williams, who is the leading receiver on this team with 7 receptions for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 22.4 yards per catch, which is great. He is their deep threat. He is the guy that they're going to go to and take shots at. Then you have on the other side of him, you have wide receiver John Mechie, who has 11 receptions for 146 yards and for a 13.3 average and 1 touchdown. Now, this guy's going to be more of your go-to guy. Mechie is their guy that is the guy that Bryce Young is going to look for on 3rd and long, or when they need a first down, or when they need a big play. Mechie is going to be there for them. You also have tight end Cameron Latou, who has 3 receptions for 43 yards. Doesn't seem like much, but 2 of those 3 receptions have been for touchdowns. So yeah, I like what Alabama has to offer on offense, right? Now let's go to defense. And some strengths on Alabama's defense, of course, defensive line play, defensive backfield play, and assignment football. We all know Alabama does not beat themselves too much with penalties or with blown assignments. You aren't going to see guys running wide open because of a miscue in the secondary, or these guys are going to make open field tackles. Alabama just does everything perfectly, or almost perfectly, and it just is what it is. I'm not riding them. I'm not jumping on a bandwagon or anything like that. At some point, you got to look the truth in the face and face the truth. And the truth is, Alabama is it's Alabama and everybody else, right? Alabama and everybody else. As far from what I've seen in 2 weeks of football, it's Alabama and everybody else. So that's just what it is. As far as weaknesses on the defense, I would say linebacker depth with Allen's injury. Because Allen, he was doing a great job against Miami, getting at the quarterback, getting pressure, getting sacks. I know those guys have stepped up, but the next game they played was Mercer, so that really wasn't a test, or really wasn't something that I could grade the depth of the linebackers on. So I'm going to say linebacker depth is going to be the only weakness that I can find in this defense. And let's talk about some key players on Alabama's defense. And let's start with defensive lineman Phil Mathis. He has 8 tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 fumble recovery. He's going to be the anchor on that defensive line, right? Then that linebacker, we have Henry To'o, the Tennessee transfer, and he is the leading tackle. He's tied for the lead in tackles on this team at 13 tackles. You have linebacker Christian Harris, who has 13 tackles and a sack. And then you also have linebacker Will Anderson, who has 12 tackles and a sack. Now, remember, I said linebacker depth was a weakness. Their starting linebackers are a definite strength, right? Definite strength. But behind those guys, I just don't know how proven they are because we didn't see much of them in a game that actually mattered or that was actually close or that was actually against some competition that was up to par with these guys here. In the defensive backfield, you got cornerback Josh Jobe, who's going to be the leader of the cornerbacks. He has 5 tackles and 1 pass defended. Then you're going to have safety Jordan Battle, who has 8 tackles as well. So I just feel Alabama's defense is all around one of the best defenses in college football, if not the best defense in college football. And I think they will put Florida's offense to the test, and we'll see how Dan Mullen steps up to that test, right? Now let's move on to 3 keys on offense and 3 keys on defense for Alabama to win this game. The 3 keys I have on offense for Alabama: number 1, get more out of the running game. The running game, now you know what I'm saying? You so far in 2 games, you had 72 attempts for 305 yards at 4.2 yards a carry and only 3 touchdowns out of the running game. So I do think that these guys need to get the running game, get more of the running game in this one. I think Florida's defensive backfield is going to be the best defensive backfield that Alabama has faced this year. I think they're slightly above Miami. So you got to get more out of that running game, man. That running game, I mean, the running game is usually the bread and butter for Alabama. The last few years, they've had some pretty high-profile quarterbacks, but before that, when Alabama was building this dynasty, it was always about the run game, and you had a game manager at quarterback, but you ran the ball down teams' throats willingly. So, yeah, just get more out of the running game as the first key on offense. The second key on offense is attack this secondary. Attack the secondary. They've shown against FAU that they'll give up some yards and they'll give up a couple big plays. So attack them. Have Bryce Young get out and hit his receivers, take a few shots down the field. It always helps. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Just gotta attack this Florida secondary, especially being in Benny Hill Griffin Stadium. You're gonna have to take some of that momentum away. So attack the secondary. Number 3, protect Bryce Young. Florida is going to try to do everything and anything to get Bryce Young on the ground, get him sacked, get him uncomfortable, get his feet happy. Remember, in one of Florida's keys on defense, I said make Bryce Young beat you with his legs. So Florida's going to have to get after Bryce Young, and in order to get after Bryce Young, you're going against this offensive line. Remember, I said this offensive line isn't a real big strength, even though they only given up 1 sack. It isn't a real big strength on this defense. So I mean on this offense. So we'll see. But yeah, Alabama has to protect Bryce Young in order to win this game. Now let's move on to 3 keys on defense. Number 1, contain the quarterback run. Contain the quarterback run. On Florida's team, their 2 leading rushers are the quarterbacks. With one quarterback averaging something like 25 yards a carry, right? So what they have to do is they have to contain the quarterback run. If it's Emory Jones, if it's Anthony Richardson, contain the quarterback run. Do not let the quarterback run go for big plays. Let it beat you, make it obsolete from the beginning, and then you kind of make Florida's offense obsolete if you do that. Number 2, suffocate the wide receivers. Suffocate the wide receivers the same way you did in the Miami game. Nobody's open, nobody's going to be open, and nobody's getting open. Yeah, man, Alabama has to suffocate the UF wide receivers, contain the quarterback running, and you pretty much contain the offense. And then number 3, be Alabama. Be Alabama on defense. Dominate every phase of the game, all the time, anytime, every time. And that's it, man. My 3 keys on defense: contain the quarterback run, suffocate the UF wide receivers, and be Alabama. Now let's talk about 2 key matchups that I'm looking for in this game. I'm looking forward to seeing in this game. Number 1, Bama's run defense versus Florida's run offense. I touched on it a little bit earlier in my keys, But yeah, Florida's run offense is off the chain right now, averaging 381 yards a game. Alabama's run defense is even off the chainish too, if that's a word. Don't judge me on my damn vocabulary. But Bama's run defense is only giving up 77.5 yards a game. Florida's rush offense is getting 381 yards a game. Somebody is going to have to break. I think that's going to be a great matchup to watch and see how it unfolds tomorrow on Saturday. My second key matchup would be Florida secondary versus Bama's wide receivers and Bryce Young. They've already shown you that they can hit the big play. They can go deep. They can go short. These guys are consistent. They make plays. How does Florida secondary step up to this, being that they gave up 264 passing yards to N'Kosi Perry and FAU? How do they step up to Bryce Young and these elite wide receivers that he has, and a very good tight end group that he has as well too? Is going to be another crazy matchup to see. Another crazy matchup to see that I can't wait. And now for my score prediction. I do believe that Alabama covers the spread. I think Alabama wins 34-17, but I do believe this game is close for 2.5 to 3 quarters before Alabama blows it open on some miscues on Florida's behalf in the fourth quarter. So you heard it here first, people. Alabama 34, Florida 17. Lock it in. I hate the Gators. I hope Alabama beat them 70-0, but since this is an unbiased preview, Alabama wins this game 34-17 in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium to improve to 3-0 and show that they are the true number one team, and it's them and everybody else. I appreciate you guys taking out the time to listen to my preview of this game. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And I am Rail, and I got a damn sports opinion. Signing out. Peace.